friends! It was on a day when the sun pierced the curtains, and a warm breeze wafted through the window of my home where I self-isolated, that my mind was brought to another sunny day, this one, 3,600 years ago, on the lush island of Crinus, where a figure was standing on a stony peak overlooking the rolling hills and the golden billows down below. The figure was a slender youth of about 15, dressed in a short tunic with a leather belt where a dagger was attached, and with a spear in hand. She could have been mistaken for a boy were it not for the long and straggly hair, haphazardly tied over her back. Theppa, come now! From behind, a voice shot through the air. It came from a boy about the same age. He was gesturing wildly in the direction of the forest behind him. The dogs found the boy we saw a fortnight ago, with one tusk long and one short. Where is it, Luca? Asked the maiden, whose name we now know was Theppa. Down by the creek, not far from the clearing. Let us go, said Theppa, gripping her spear, and with her companion sprinted into the woods. As the two reached the creek, they saw the great beast cornered by hunting dogs and harassed by their incessant barking. Without thinking, Luca lunged his spear in the direction of the beast. The spear flew past its right ear, enraging the animal, and he charged at Luca at full speed. Watch out! Theppa dashed to the beast, and in an instant mounted its back and drove her dagger down its sinewy flesh before it thrust her off and fled deeper into the woods. Theppa ran to her friend, drew his dagger out of the sheath, and pursued the boar. Soon she outran the dogs and disappeared with the boar into the dense vegetation. After much running, the boar finally gave way to fatigue, and the moment it stopped, Theppa flung herself onto the beast and with one fatal blow killed the giant animal. Presently, Luca arrived with the dogs. He saw the dead boar and said, Theppa, if you are not Ilo, that hunter god's favorite, I do not know who is. It is too large for us to carry down the hill. Let us call on Milidu and his sons on our way back to the palace. But be quick, for we must prepare for tonight's banquet, said Theppa. The pair refreshed themselves with a cooling spring by the creek, then made their descent. As they reached the clearing where the road forked into two, they saw with wonder that the carriage drawn by 2 horses and daintily fashioned with ivory beads was approaching with difficulty. Man, direct us to King Orolo's palace, said the driver of the carriage. Man, your way of speaking shows you lack manners. Also, you lack good sense riding a carriage in these parts, said Luca. Youngster, I am Prince Elimo of Salos, here to pay visit to your king. We stumbled upon this hilly path, not having been well acquainted with your roads, said the man in the carriage. Welcome, honored guest, said Theppa. I am Theppa of Crinis, Orolo's daughter. Father and mother are anxiously awaiting your arrival. Surprised, the prince turned to Theppa, and with his eyes inspected her from head to toe. The look of surprise quickly turned to contempt, a look that her friend Luca took notice. Theppa, could this overdressed donkey really be your Salosian cousin? I will defend my honor, said the prince. His driver drew a sword. Take up your sword and defend your own honor, lest you are one of the womenfolk. Luca, cried Theppa. Go to Milidu at once and see if he could deliver our hunt to the palace. Turning to the prince, she said, Follow me, honored guest. We shall reach the palace before long. At the great hall, King Orlolos, that famed warrior who made his name in the Ligurian War, and Queen Amadrina, the cunning daughter of Salos, welcomed the Sarlosian prince with a sumptuous feast. Elimu, dear nephew, what pleasure you give us with this visit, said the queen.
Illustrious lady of Crinus, dear aunt, I am lost in admiration. Is it not only those of divine descent whose beauty never see decay?
Your visit is timely, Elimu. We shall begin wedding preparations now that Theppa is of age, said the queen, nodding at Theppa, who, seated next to Elimu, was dressed in a robe of delicate white, her flowing hair plaited in golden silk and adorned with spring lilies.
Dear aunt, the bond between our countries is eternal, even without a royal marriage,
said Elimu. Now King Orlolos, who had been silent, said,
Nothing man-made is eternal, but Crinus shall honor its alliance with Salos, with or without a marriage.
After the banquet, Queen Amadrina secretly sent for the prince. Elimu, this marriage was agreed since you and Theppa were children.
Dear aunt, there was never a formal betrothal.
You shall be king of Salos and Crinus by marrying Orlolos' only child. How can I marry my cousin when she loves that man Luca, who this very afternoon told me upon our first meeting that he and my cousin shall marry and threaten my life with a sword? Lied Elimu. Luca, son of Theppa's nurse, exclaimed the queen. Elimu's words confirmed her fear that Luca, who with Theppa was nursed on the same breasts, might one day covet a royal marriage and seize the throne. Why are you downcast over a servant? Be merry. Tomorrow I shall give you a wedding gift, said the queen. No one saw Luca the following morning. Where could he be, leaving the horses unfed? Complained the servant. Perhaps he is with Milidu and his sons, to thank them for their help. He will be caught in a storm if he doesn't make haste, said Theppa, noting the thickening clouds. Afternoon came. The clouds, now dark and ominous, hung low over the palace and the fields. Trapped in a chamber and had nothing to do, Theppa drifted into an uneasy sleep and had a dream. In the dream, she was in the woods chasing the boar she caught yesterday, running through the same pathless terrain. As they reached the spring by the creek, the boar slowed, and Theppa subdued it with her dagger. The beast collapsed, facing upward. Then Theppa saw that it had a human face. Luca's face. A thunderclap struck, and Theppa woke up in a daze. She heard the raging wind and thunder outside her window, But what gripped her heart with dread was the wailing piercing through the storm. She ran out to the courtyard where the wailing came and saw the servants sobbing in the circle. In the circle was Nurse, clinging onto her son's lifeless body.
My son! My son!
Wailed Nurse. Luca! Cried Theppa, flinging herself to the ground.
My life! How do I live, now that you are gone to the underworld like your father? Who will be my staff in my old age? Who will sweeten my burden on bitter earth? Wept Nurse. Dear women, whose strong arms cradled Luca and me in our infancy, I will avenge his blood. He who committed this evil deed will not escape my sword! Cried Theppa, leaping to her feet.
Aquinia, the queen's maid, suddenly threw herself at Theppa's feet, sobbing uncontrollably. But Theppa strolled away without noticing. The maid got up and followed her into the royal shrine, where there stood the family sword in front of Ailo's altar.
Young mistress, do not swear this oath,
cried the maid. Let Ailo heap on me all his fury if I do not avenge my friend's blood, cried Theppa, drawing the sword and kneeling down before the altar. Ailo, god of forest, protector of Crinus, hear my oath. The evildoer who shed Luca's blood shall die under my sword, and let me be banished from your sight and from this land if I do not fulfill my oath.
Oh, Theppa, God's have mercy.
The maid wept.
The one who ordered Luca's murder is your mother, the queen.
Sir, what is your destination? Sicily, replied a man on a merchant ship packed with bronze ingots. I wonder, is there room for one more? Yes, but do get on now, for we are ready to set sail, said the man, peering curiously at the stranger with badly cut hair and shrouded in a cloak. Theppa, Theppa, an old man cried out, seizing a corner of the stranger's cloak. Is this how you part with your old father? Running away without a kiss nor a word? Father, I cannot fulfill my oath, and now I must roam the earth, accursed.
Theppa, my pride, my joy.
Orlos wept bitterly. Farewell, said Theppa, tears streaming down her face. After 2 days, the ship reached Golden Sicily, where merchants from the east and the west gathered to trade bronze weapons and tools and vases of every kind. Theppa, seized by a fervor to go as far as she could, set out to find another vessel soon after her ship was moored, and before long was aboard another cargo ship faring east. For 3 days, a steady wind from the west filled the vessel's white sail, speeding its course. The monotony of seafaring did not lift Theppa out of mourning, but brought her solace, and she began to consider her path. On the 4th day, Theppa woke up to the sight of mountainous Crete, Minos Island with fresco-adorned palaces and bustling trade. The vessel pulled into the crowded port and was moored. All around were merchants buying and selling, sailors loading and unloading cargoes of tin, copper, gold, silver, ceramics, olive oil, and textiles. While marveling from the deck, Theppa saw an old man by the quay, standing like a lost child in the middle of the great flocks, His behavior puzzled her until she realized that he was blind. Suddenly, a passerby brushed against the old man with his cargo, causing him to lose balance and fall off the quay. Instantly, Theppa dived into the water and, being a good swimmer, quickly reached the old man and ushered him to safety. "Master!" a man pushed through the onlookers. "Have no fear, Pizzo. This boy saved me from harm," said the old man, turning to Theppa. "Thank you. I am Telos, a merchant of the city. I perceive that you are not a Cretan. Let me repay your kindness and give you hospitality as mandated by the gods." For a fortnight, Theppa was under Telos' gracious hospitality. "Young friend, that you would gladden my heart by prolonging your stay," said Telos, who, childless, treated Theppa with fatherly tenderness. "Who could refuse mellow-hearted Telos? But I must be on my way," said Theppa. "Let it be so. Before we part, perhaps I can know your name? I have until now refrained from asking, for I sense a great reluctance," said Telos. "My name is Luca," said Theppa. "Luca? You are Luyan, then, from Luca lands," said Telos. "I am not, though I heard that my father, who died young, was from one of those parts," said Theppa, who vaguely remembered the account about Luca's father. "You are not very far, if it is Luca lands your destination," said Telos. "I do long to see my father's ancestral land, even though I'm accursed, and like chaff must be blown about where the wind rises," said Theppa. "You seem to me one favored by the gods. It may be that some divine plan is behind your trials. Take my servant Pitizio. He is familiar with that region. May the great goddess grant you safe journey," said Telos. Early morning, Theppa and Pitizio set sail to Lucalands. The journey was smooth until before sundown, when a sudden northwestern gust threatened to throw them off course. Quickly they furled the sail, and with their oars fought against the wind, and with many attempts finally guided the vessel into a harbor at an uninhabited island. For 2 days they took shelter in a cave, waiting for the blasting wind and rain to ease. On the 3rd day, the sky was clear, but no wind. With the sail rendered useless, they had to row most of the way until Lucaland's austere mountains and craggy shores came into view. After landing, Theppa and Pitizio followed a stony passage into the mountains and did not stop until they saw a little hut with some animals outside before darkness set in. "Friends, you may stay here for the night, for the nearest village is a day's walk away," said the woman just coming out. The two thanked her, and with a bit of bread to eat and a straw mat to sleep on, concluded the woeful voyage. at night. The animals outside made a sudden stir. Then the door burst open, and 2 burglars stormed into the hut, knocking over jugs and jars and anything that came into their sight. Then they stopped, for they saw by the moonlight leaking through the roof that they were being watched by a boy with piercing eyes. Ahem. Father says, the bigger the sword, the smaller the valor, said Theppa. He also says, to each instrument its purpose. Never use a sword when you can use a dagger. Finally, Father says, evil doers shall find calamity. To this I add, in particular, those who think it sensible to wield a big sword in the little hut. Theppa pounced on the intruders, knocking the swords out of their hands, and with the daggers slashed across one's face and the other's chest. The men were filled with such dread that they burst out of the hut and disappeared down the path into the dark. At dawn, Theppa and Pitizio said farewell to their kind-hearted host, who filled their water-skin to the top and gave them a bundle filled with flour cakes and some boiled meat. Luca, tell me where you want to go, now that we are on the road. I will gladly escort you wherever it may be, said Pitizio. Thank you, friend, said Theppa. I have no destination in mind except to roam the earth. Even so, one cannot roam the earth all at once, said Pitizio, pointing ahead where the road branched into 2. The road to the left leads you north and west, where several principalities scatter across the land. You will be among your father's people as they are Luwian, whereas the road ahead takes you north and east, where there lies in the land of Hatti a kingdom of great renown, ruled by a Hittite king. You have stirred my curiosity, Pitizio, said Theppa. Let us go and see that great kingdom in the east.